Is September going to bring a huge cataclysmic disaster, or is it going to bring something better than we can ever imagine? Maybe both is actually about to happen. And it just depends on where you are in your evolutionary scale of consciousness. Seven Bomar has been talking about this over at astroquest.com. He's one of the most diverse and enigmatic speakers of our times. He raises the bar for what is generally discussed by mental, spiritual, and physical advisors. Bomar is rapidly gaining explosive recognition with his unique messages at astroquest.com. And we've had him on many times before, and he's got a ton of information to share with us. So I don't want to take up too much of the time talking because I really want to just jump in headfirst into this. But Seven, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good, Chris. It's always great to be on Truth Frequency. We definitely always get it done. And it's definitely one of those times to where it's probably the best time to really link up because, I'm feeling just like you. I'm definitely getting a lot of signs. And obviously being this far along the path, being able to interpret what those signs are really saying from both levels, as you pointed out, is just really your dual perspective. This is just a good time to begin to really unfold to people what we're really involved in. Just let's get adept with the conversation today just once, at least. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Where do you want to begin?
Well, I want to first start off by saying, first of all, it's always great, again, I'll say it twice, to be on True Frequency with family. And that's first and foremost between anything that I could talk about tonight is to realize that when we're having these conversations, you're amongst the biorhythm, synchronistic brothers and sisters that we've really been with across the timeline, and we're culminating at a certain point. And so this message is today, I believe, just designed around that primarily, is that this is a special and unique message that's not as generalized, but more personal to those who are finding themselves on this path. Because even if you're listening to this broadcast, it really takes a lot to keep immersing yourself into figuring out what's going on with your life and taking the responsibility to do that. So, there's a wide range of things, and I happened to talk to Cherie earlier this week, and one of the main things we wanted to center today's conversation around was how to really look at the situation that we're dealing with, and that we actually continue to deal with almost every year when we cook something up for ourselves. I would say that may not be in our favor, and so I guess I'll first start with saying that the September as a month is a very unique month in the first place, because you can even go to the Google and you can type in major events in September or that have occurred in September, and you'll get basically a list of the different things that have happened, like the starting of World War II, obviously 9/11, the freedom of many different countries. So you'll get all of the statistics. And I find that this becomes the most useful method of finding that, as many tout, that as below, so above nature to things, but basically how to read what's going on across the timelines by just looking at what are the events that happen in the month that we're participating in now. And in that, I kind of see us as these time travelers, even just with that, because we have this access to this tech that's giving us the ability to look back into time and to see even what ancient civilizations were doing, and then even where the descendants of those ancient civilizations are now and what became of them. We have a grand scope, if you may, or a big mirror to look into to see the action and reaction behind our thoughts, our actions, etc. But someone's going to have to grab the wheel here, and that someone definitely should be you. This is a message to each individual, that you have to get to a point in your life to where you don't allow what goes on externally and what's predicted necessarily externally to control not only what you're doing next and what you're thinking next, but also learning how to use both forces, whether you want to call them positive or negative, light or dark, whatever, but using both forces to be what we are in the first place, which is a balance between those forces. So me and the humans make up a positive and a negative field. And just by having those positive and negative fields alone, from what we've learned about dual forces, is that they actually both cancel themselves out. And so our experience here on the planet can really be seen as illusionary only because our constant actions are a mixture of two opposing forces that generally cancel each other out. So when we start understanding these principles to light and darkness, we can definitely then come to the conclusion that if there's a lot of chaos and disaster going on, then there must be a lot of what would be the opposing energy to that, some call that positivity, building up somewhere. And then the only thing that's necessary now is that we begin to learn how to tap that energy without overloading ourselves or I would say, let me see, I'm looking for the right words here, but basically when you get to a point where you receive some massive revelation, but now you can't even harmonize with other people and begin to explain to them or convert to them what you've began to discover. And so, it's a big thing though. And so tonight I really want to start talking about it really from the ground up. I can really go anywhere with this, but I think that, there's a necessity for us to just start understanding this from a factual level. Like, what are the real integers here that control whether this is going to be a good thing, this is going to be a bad thing? Also, what is really going on in the planetary system anyway? Because it's almost like if you look back over the last 5 years, 10 years, we've been these, even in just looking in your own mind, we've been these human beings that are on this planet and just constantly subject to, I don't know what's going on, I don't know where I came from, I don't know what's going to happen next. And just that overall bewilderment will cause a certain state of consciousness that breeds fear, because fear is, of course, the unknown, not knowing how to read the stars to tell what's going to occur next, because everything that's already happened, or everything that's happened continues to happen again. But there's also these reference points that we can now latch a hold of. And I think I covered this years ago when we had to sit down and just think, well, what was the maximum stage that humanity ever reached on the planet anyway? And then, or even clearer, when are the points that things just change drastically, where they're never going to be the same again? Like, what's going to be the big shift? What was the big shift during the Roman Empire? What was the big shift during when the Commetans were in Egypt? Like, why are they still in Egypt and we're still using the gold and, there's still statues? Why aren't we doing that anymore? What makes these shifts? And what we'll find is that every now and again, certain things occur, and then after those things occur, nothing will ever be the same again. And I'm here to really say that we are that we are the thing that once we fully wake up to what we really are, things will never be the same again, because it's going to cause a chain reaction. So it's like asking, well, what happened to those people from thousands and thousands of years ago? And what we come to the conclusion of is they found out about many races of people, is that they just disappeared.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because it seems to come at the fall of an empire as well, and we are seeing the American empire falling. So maybe this is all related. We'll be right back. Seven, you are correct in saying that there's been a lot of civilizations that have just up and disappeared. But at these times of shifting too, we see empires falling. Would you agree and with the idea that it's actually happening right now?
Well, for sure. Empires are designed to fall. I mean, that's just the whole construct of the physicality. Like, anything that is built must again be destroyed to be rebuilt again. And my metaphor for this is that if you're an architect and you build a house and you find that there are certain things that you would rather have different, then if you ever get an opportunity to build another house, you're going to build it without those flaws. And so we see within the entire experience, not just humans, animals, and all the bioorganisms that are here, that everything is in a process of, it's what we would say evolution. That evolution comes about by continuously adapting to the environment. Because the environment in nature is more or less leading things. Like if it's cold, really cold outside, that even determines what you're wearing. It can determine your mindset. It can determine a lot of things. So there's this consistent process. But the first thing, just to not leave it off like people are like, oh, we're going to disappear. Is there going to be a rapture? But, the scope of this, though, is if you really, you've done your ceremonies already, you've taken your medicine. So you know that there's the potential for something like that to occur. That wouldn't even seem to be far off to some of the things that we've been able to see, meaning that this is still the limitless. So we can't actually say what can't happen. But the ones, because those of us who have been really expanding ourselves the most, see that we can enter a plane to where almost anything can happen. So from there, what I believe is, if it's really a cycle, which I see it is, if it's really an orbit, which I see it is, if it's really to do with circles, which we see it is, then we know that there's a high point. And then once that high point occurs, something goes on, and then there's like a reset to the whole thing, and then it starts again. And when we really drill down into what is that something that goes on, what I find is that the best metaphor of it is a Mashiach. What would be a being that becomes super powerful, a human that taps into all their potential and abilities and then wakes up. Because at that point, what it causes is a chain reaction of multiple beings beginning to wake up. And so I think that this is why we're introduced to stories like Christianity per se, because they're basically hacked stories of the phenomena that really occurs with any being that begins to sit on a planetary system so long that they start to figure out the framework and how things are put together by whatever put it into play initially. Physical planes have to be put into play initially. So what I believe is that there becomes this activation of the body, which I've experienced as otherworldly. And then when that starts to become commonplace, because the procedures start happening to where groups of people, one person, whatever you want to say, starts to actually show others, hey, this can be done. Because remember, this is happening now. Then it creates this phenomena where people start to actually activate. And then this is what happens, because it's very easy to gauge the energetic potential of the planet. Once it kicks up to a certain point, you get to what people would say is the 100th monkey. But really what it is that the energy starts to connect through everything. So if there's gaps in the division, this energy puts everything together because it's like a spark plug. It sends a spark through the gap. And the more people that are actually getting into these frequencies, they're creating this organic grid. We've talked about all this before, but we're actually now seeing it happening. And then, just as I said, the reason why stuff likes to culminate around September is because September has a mark in it. It has many marks in it to where the energetic field of the planet has spiked due to the events that have occurred within this time. But every time the spike goes up, let's say it was 9/11, there's another diametrically opposed energetic field that opens up also that can equally be utilized. So, of course, we know that all we get is the bad news. Like when you turn on news, you just get the bad news. It's not like, there's people, we donated $5 million a day, and you don't very seldom get much of that. And it's really also because people, they don't really want to hear that. They want to hear the bad thing, because what's actually happened is that they began to feed on the negativity. And this is a big thing, because realize that if anyone takes the stance that I'm the positive, I'm the plus sign, and that means you're the good one, I guess, that's a mind job. But again, if one takes the plus sign, this means they actually will go around life needing the negative side, because we don't operate without one and the other. So this is why you'll find people who are supposedly extremely positive and extremely enlightened, whatever, always on the web in the morning trying to predict, like a Christian, the destruction of the planet because X, Y, Z. And it's just, they need that negative component to power them. So what happens is that once you start realizing that all this is going on, and then you stop letting the joke be on you, you start realizing, actually, it's whatever energy that I really want to tap into. And true enough, if everyone chooses to tap into the negative force, then they're going to feel negative, and they're going to feel like everything is falling apart. But for that being that begins to see, well, shoot, if we tapped in last year around September, and then we'll see, they said the stock market was going to crash and everything then. And then the previous September to that was when, and then if you just go through the chronological order of the month, you'll see that media always does a certain thing. They try to scare the crap out of everyone so they can cling closer to their surrogate mother, which is the society, the system, to try to re-strengthen it for another round of slavery. Because let's just be frank here, if for some reason the economy collapses, the people who are going to really suffer from that is actually the rich people. Because they're the ones using money. See, people think that, well, it's no, because they have their stuff already set up and they have these houses and they have these lands and they have their sustain. No. You don't know what you're talking about. They spent hundreds of years trying to implement this false system called money. Do you think for one moment that they would do away with that system that has given them so much control? No, but they would scare everyone into believing so. Now, money will continue to transform, meaning that it's gone from paper to plastic. What you want, paper or plastic? It's like credit, it's paper money, then credit cards. Then it goes now to ether, because that's why they have the new Ethereum currency, and all the banks are restructuring their algorithms because it's foolproof. It doesn't allow fraud. But that still doesn't mean that you won't have your PayPal connected to your Ethereum and then still being able to transact, because that component has to remain there for the level of control that society has been put under. So it's not going anywhere is what I'm saying. But this is the kind of things that are used to keep us away from the obvious of what's happening with the opposite energy. Because if it's supposed to crash, then there's also that energy that that really builds things up. And so this is about getting to that.
Very well said. And you're absolutely right. I would agree with you that all of this economic crisis and economic scares, that's all they are. It's to keep people in a state of fear, like the housing bubble and the banker bailouts. The only people that were really in trouble were the bankers.
Exactly.
But once the people started paying attention to it, then they were affected by everything, and it started affecting everything up and down the line. We'll be right back. We're speaking with Seven Bomar of astralquest.com. We're talking about ascension and what's happening now in September. Is it going to be a time of doom and gloom, or is it going to be a time of ascension? And if it is a time of ascension, then how does the positive and negative dichotomy play into all of this, and where exactly can we stand? And according to Seven, we can stand right in the middle. That's what it's all about. It always has been and always will be about the balance. Seven, take us away, please.
Well, it's like this. Let's just get on with it already. Let's take the responsibility already. Like, I don't want to be sitting on a dimension just waiting for some stuff to happen that, and I'm acting like I'm powerless when I'm really already in the know that I have some power. Now, I may have to keep pushing. I may have to wax more stronger. But that's going to come when I take the responsibility of what I really need to do here on the dimension. So you see how it's rigged. If you say, I, Chris Geo, in having access to a certain level of power, am going to maximize that power in order to fully take the world into the next stage of things. The only thing they have for you is a cross and some stoning. Meaning you literally get from others that, you think you're the master of us? You think that but mind you, these are the same people that are basically being abused by this system and are rapidly looking for a way to be released from this. And what better way than that to be done by someone that we know and trust and that we have the honor and respect for? And what better than having a large group of individuals that begin to do that, and to a point where it happens with all of us. Now listen here. We all, at some point, will leave physicality. So rather than getting all clinging to it as if it's just not going to go anywhere and playing that childish game, maybe we should just start thinking about what are we going to do after this. And I've gotten my real scope together, if you may, about what goes on after this and how you get into the space that you really want to get into, meaning how do you die? Like I have to write a book about this now. As I said it, someone's going to do it. But how do you die? What is the proper way to really leave? And then the deep part about this is not about the death that everyone thinks of, like dying on the freeway in an accident. This is not that. This is about how do you die daily? So that way, when you do finally decide to check out of here, that you already know what you're doing. You're like professionally dying. You see, because we can admit that even within the body, they say thousands of millions of cells die every single day. So at the fabric of who we are, we know how to leave one situation and come into another. I mean, geez, we've been doing it since before time. So now when we ask ourselves, so what is the next phase for me? Like, even if I sat on the planet for 3,000 years, we discovered anti-aging. At some point, I would still have to say to myself, I've now seen everything. I've seen Morocco, I've seen, towers fall. I've seen buildings. I've seen the highest buildings in the world. I've seen all this. Now I have so much, I can't even absorb it all. That's like the internet. There's so much there. You can't ever see it all because it's all being developed even while we're speaking now. So what you would still have to ask yourself is like, so what's next for me? And that what's next is the total activation of your being. But it just so happens when you do that, you actually do see the end of the world as you know it. And then an opening up of the continuum, and it doesn't skip a beat. Like they say, the real adept never goes to sleep. The moment that they lay down, they pick up from where they left off when they were awake. And the two are betwixt, and to a point where you don't actually feel a difference between when you're awake and you're asleep because you're not doing any one of those. And that's a little bit of the esoteric knowledge about what happens next. But let's keep it grounded to things like, basically, we're forming a brand new way here already because we're creators. So we have the ability, despite what anyone is saying, to bring forth a whole new manifold that would be easily better than the Catholic regime, easily better than the whole Israeli, the whole Islamic, and easily better than any of this stuff. It would seem so easy to us now to make a transition into something's better versus back in the day, especially the way in which it was being observed. All of any real tradition had what we're looking for right now, meaning that we can't confuse the religions of today back with the levels of life when we were still in accordance with the natural elements. But what is nature? Nature is the mother. She nurtures us. But isn't there always a time to leave mom's house? So we have to realize that happens symbolically. We'll still be on the planet, but we've actually got unscrewed from going the flow of the Nile, only traveling directions that the rivers go because we don't have the power to go upstream. Basically, being molded and fashioned by things that have the ability to do that. But now it's time to, and we all feel that, a lot of us feel that in our waking. It's like, okay, now it's time for me to do my own thing. And this is the same thing. Like, there's nothing different about the universes and the planets than what we've already experienced and we can see other people experience in their lives. There's a time where you say to your parents, I'm ready. And this is what this is about. And you can call it, like I was telling people back in 2012 when they had cooked up the doom and gloom for themselves last time. I said, listen, you can have the 2012 at any time. Same thing this month. Now, there's always better times than others. Like, there is a real sequence to things. This month, there's a massive portal open. I don't know what's causing it because I don't need to know all that. I would just be gathering a bunch of data. What I just need to know is that there's one open. So what is that? But what can I do with that? And I'm explaining to everyone that means that this connection directly to you, the real you, because surely you can't think that if you're just at this magnitude that you're fully who you are. That's just not how it works. But the full magnitude of who you are, the connection and the path to that is straight. Now, of course, because that's what a lineup is. Now, of course, you're going to get all these jokers then trying to throw something into your tarot card game to reset you back to at least the golden age. So that you can go through all the zodiacal houses acting like a zoological animal again, rather than graduating the zodiac and becoming a cosmos. So
Wow.
even
It's amazing that you say that, Seven, because I've been doing birth charts for people for the last several years now. And I've noticed that the birth charts and especially the transit charts almost have no meaning now. It's almost as if we've transcended above needing things like birth charts or transit charts. And that astrology, it used to be the fates. It used to be what determined your life. Now it just doesn't.
Yes.
It doesn't have to anymore.
Yes. I mean, you're spot on. And it's almost like when you read one sign to another, there's such a slight small variations, they just blur. And it's because that's what they were designed to do. That one comes so smoothly after another that you hardly notice the transition. It's like getting older. You don't actually see the aging in the mirror every single day. It's only when you go in like 10 years later and take a look that you can actually see it. It happens so gradually. So we also have to see that the reality that we're in is a big fan of this gradual process to something. So I'm just saying that there's a gradual process that we're going through now that's culminating, that has been about us getting into this next level. And I'm one of those people that can speak quite frankly that not only that I've been there, it does truly exist. And so in the greatest thing to realize when you're there is that, well, there's something else that everyone doesn't even know right here. And we have the opportunity to get into this and to teach others to do the same.
Hold right there. We'll be right back. Quest.com and any other projects you might be working on.
For sure. Well, actually, we've moved over to Secret Energy, and it's great. Like, we're constantly upgrading the platform. We're actually about to go into Secret Energy 2.0. And that means that we're just going to get more, we're putting more social in the social. And then we're also going to really be working with getting real-time information to people. I'm going to start getting on the blog path again myself. And then I definitely have linked up with a team of superheroes, including Ruby. And we're going to see what we can really get going with releasing a lot of the real-time information that we're coming across. Because let's just face it, if I get on one of these interviews and I'm just trying to really cram so much, I'm really just only scanning for what a person needs to really hear to get relief. Versus, let me give it to you from the top down and then all the way down to back to the top of every single point of how this is really happening. And so the first thing that we actually did was we started the Innerversity. And I think that was the major blow. Like, that may even be what caused the portal to open, I'm not sure. But it's basically saying, okay, well, we know the information is vast, but we need to put it in some kind of order. What do people really need to know? And so we started first with celestial mechanics, which basically explains to a person beyond the shadow of a doubt that they are a cosmos. And because this is like, when you're being demoralized all day because the whole MK Ultra, the mind control and all this stuff that we're dealing with, even the battery that we put on one another, even the children act all crazy. At the end of the day, you find yourself extremely demoralized. So the last thing you want to believe is when someone comes around and tells you that you're a cosmos, whether that's even true or not. But yet that same person will go and try to find their zodiac sign, which shows you're at least a planet. So it's all about like, okay, smack, wake up. You can't really do one thing and not do the other. And then so you have to find that clutch point basically within yourself to say, well, let's just take it as it is. If I'm here and I'm in this complex existence as far as this body, there's all these thousands of things and heart and lung and hair and all of this couldn't be in vain. Meaning nobody goes this far with putting this kind of thing together without there being some kind of purpose. Like, look at how our own lives are. We're not going to do something this technical and graduated and structured just to throw it all away. And that's what you see. When you get beyond this, you see that, look, there's an intelligent design that from another spectrum, it looks perfect. The geometry is perfect. From down here, it looks like a mess. Next door neighbor is trying to build a house that's not even like yours because he's in a competition to build a bigger house so that the house he builds throws everything off as a geometry. That's how you see it. This person next door doesn't understand how you really vibe and connect with all there is because they're too busy trading on the stock market, so they're not the truth, is how you see it. So all of these different judgments and all this stuff flying from one place to another makes us think it's all chaos because that's what we're experiencing it as. Until we step back for a moment, rise up, and then take another look. Because when you take that other look, you'll be like, oh man, this is intelligent design. So let me rewind this here. That means that there is something, I don't want to define it, but there is something that clearly understands how all this is put together and is clearly perfecting to make sure that it stays here and that it continues to operate despite what we're doing. Because let's say this, if we were the ones responsible for making sure that this thing goes to another level, we still have yet to pull the trigger. Meaning we still have yet to actually take on the responsibility that it's our responsibility to go into these school systems and teach our children, that we have to seize the power that comes with even the most adept sides of what people would call magic, but be the one that doesn't get converted and tainted by all the power that comes with it, to then take on a responsibility that would really require one to have that kind of energy to go through and have dominion over all of the other sub-life forms that are attempting to control those sectors. Again, what am I saying? I'm saying that the reason there are energies stationed around things like education, things like building, creation, and these energies still have to submit. This is what you read in the deepest books, to the more dominant frequency. And the most dominant frequency is 100% convinced that there's no separation. So while I don't care what it is, if it's glass, if it's bismuth, if it's a smoothie, I don't care what it is. If it thinks that it's separate, some being that does not believe that way has control over everything. And let me get something clear, because some people say, what do you mean smoothies? What are you even talking about? How could these things don't think? Well, there's the misinterpretation. We think that something has to think in order to survive, in order to be alive. And if it doesn't, we call it inorganic or artificial. But when you really study your medicine and you start taking your breaths, you'll find that it's when you don't think that you can actually become everything. And you can actually tap into everything. So that means that probably most things that don't do a lot of thinking are already tapped in. So I'll give you another metaphor. When we supposedly die, and you put this body in a casket, when you close that casket and you bury it under the ground, 70% of who that being is evaporates right through the casket. It can't hold them. See, all of our memories are in what? They're in the water. We are water. So 70% of us automatically goes back to where grandma and grandpa and all the rest of all of us are, in purity. Back in water. Water is the byproduct of the soul. So that's the first round. 70% of you is already collected back with the family. The other 30% are the metals. All of us contain iron, oxides, all these different things that begin to decay. And whether it takes thousands of years, will bond. This is chemistry. Bond back with their pair. They'll find their twin flame. And they will again become connected with the family of who they are. So you see what I'm talking about here? It shows you beyond a shadow of a doubt that when you leave here, you only collect back with your family. You see? And you're sentient because you're not thinking. Because that's the height of meditation. Any lama, any monk will always tell you, man, you got to clear out your mind. You can't be thinking because the thoughts are tied into the language. And that construct is tied into the lower mind. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't have a use, but its use is how you operate on the physical plane. So if you're trying to go to where things are non-physical, that's how you get there. You drop the shell, and then you jettison from there. And I want to see if I have enough time before the break to get into the next concept. But if not, it's probably great if I just pause here, because the next thing is about how for sure you can tell what forces are spacing the frequency and how the frequencies are being spaced by force, not so much as our own suggestions. And so, where are we at, Chris?
We have about a minute and a half.
Yeah. Okay. So just when we come back into this, I want to talk about the space. Like, why do you feel pressure when you go up into the atmosphere? And why do you feel pressure when you go under the water, even if it's like 3, 4, 5 feet deep? Why do you feel pressure? And then also, is it that we're perfectly almost aligned where we are now? Because if we try to go a little bit higher, there's too much pressure. And if we try to go too low, there's too much pressure. Because this is what it feels like in life. If you hit a high point, there's too much pressure. Like, oh my goodness, I got to do all this work and I got to please all these people. I got to meet the people in the morning. And then if you go too low, too much pressure. Man, I'm depressed. I can't handle this, man. This is just ridiculous. So why can't we start seeing the chemical actions that are happening in the reality. And that's the truth, what nature and how that acts upon us. Like I said, when we dive deep or we go really high, and then be able to interpret all of our experiences that way with the true roadmap or the true blueprint to how things work versus the suggestions that we keep getting from the demented mindsets. You see? So, and that's how we take control. Because when we agree not to be the demented mindset anymore and accept all of that stuff that we see is not working. And I'll say this, if I'm going to escape death, the last thing that I'm going to be doing is what everyone else is doing. Think about that.
Very well said. Hold right there, ladies and gentlemen. We will be right back. Much more. Another 2 hours right here on Truth Frequency, as a matter of fact, so don't go anywhere.